Namaste and welcome to Magic Vibration Healing School. My name is Demian Haye and I would like to speak today about addiction and to explore the dynamics of addiction. And this is part of a series of videos I'm making about different wounds. And this one is a bit special because, well, addiction, it's not, properly speaking, a wound. It's the consequence of a wound. It's the maladaptive behavior, the toxic behavior or attitude or choice or coping mechanism that comes from a wounding. So addiction is not a root cause. The root cause can be, rejection, feeling abandoned, any form of inadequacy. It can be grief. It can be any form of trauma. But then addiction is what comes out of it. It's the strategy we apply to cope with whatever happened as a root. And we all suffer from addictions. So I thought it's really interesting to share, my perspective on it. And what I'm going to share, well, it doesn't come from books. It doesn't come from psychology. It doesn't come from, what I learned from other people. It comes, first of all, from my own experience. So my own addiction. And how I could, deal with them, how I could free myself from them. And as well, it comes from, having a conversation with the spirit, the intelligence of addiction. Because, addiction has its own spirit. It has its own morphogenetic field. And by interacting with it, for a couple of months, I just wanted to share, what came out of it. So I don't pretend this video to be exhaustive about addiction, about all what it is, all what it means. It's just my piece about it. It's my understanding. It's what I observe. It's the dynamics that I see. And it's something that I would like to share with you. So first of all, the etymology. So addiction comes from Latin addicere or addicere. And well, it has to do with sacrifice. It has to do with devotion. It has to do with the concept of delivering or consecrating. And that's really interesting because we will come to this. And as well, we can see it as addiction. So diction is to speak. It comes also from Latin. And ad, it's the movement that says forward, towards. So it's to speak towards something. So it's really about indulgence. It's about to lean towards something. So that's the word that we use in English, at least. Otherwise, in many other languages, it's actually translated as dependence versus independence. So I am dependent on something. So in other Latin languages, French, Spanish, Italian, that's the word you would use for addiction. So you have this whole dynamic, right, that we need something. So let's explore the definition of addiction, through different lenses. So one of the first way to see addiction, well, is that it's a maladaptive behavior. So it's like a coping mechanism. So to cope, to deal with something. And it's usually coming from the way we deal with tension. So when we experience tension, we usually absorb the tension. We identify with it. And as we absorb the tension, well, some people keep absorbing it and it gets stuck in them. And some people choose to discharge the tension. We have different behaviors in our way that we deal with tension. In the first place is because we identified with the tension. We found, a resonance point. So we resonated with it, we identified with it. So it came into our system, so it possessed us. And either we froze and we numbed and we kept it inside, or we chose to discharge it. Well, usually addiction is part of the discharging of attention, right? So it's about releasing the charge, discharging. And the coping mechanism we choose is something that we feel this tension inside of us and we want not to feel it anymore. So then we binge on something. We eat sugar, we light a cigarette, or we go to, masturbate, or whatever, the classic addictions are. or we spend money, we go shopping. So, it's really about how we deal with tension. And if we don't know how to deal with tension, because we actually don't understand what the tension is, we don't really understand that it's an energy that cannot be composted and recycled in our system, well, then we really feel that we need to discharge it. But we discharge it in a way that is obviously detrimental, and it's addictive. And because of the nature of addiction, then, it will bring back the tension again, and we will seek the discharging again. And then we end up in a loop. Another way to see addiction is possession. Yeah. So when we, connect to something, a substance, a habit, a pattern that we're addicted to, well, there's this form of possession. So it's like a spirit that comes into our field and that allows us to indulge, to binge, to use something, although we know maybe it's not healthy for us. Or although maybe we don't want really to do it, we already know it's better not to do it, and still we do it, still we indulge. So there's already this form of possession, and we all felt it, where there is this other self or other energy that comes and makes us do things that maybe in other moments we would say, no, it's really better not to do it, and I don't want to do it anymore. But then this possession is really strong, and sometimes we end up just doing the things that we never really wanted to do. We can see it as well as submission in this sense. Yeah? There is a submission to a spirit. Yes, there is a submission in the sense that it's a loss of power, it's a loss of vitality. It's a way that it's like in a battle, a conflict of will. Well, I lose. Yeah, so I surrender, I give up. I subdue to this intelligence, to this spirit, to this force. And then it brings, of course, a whole aspect of codependency, right? So once I indulge, well, then there is this codependency, aspect that comes, that I need this substance or this pattern to keep discharging the tension, to keep, feeling good. Because if I would stop, then the tension would build up, and then I would not know what to do with it, and I would be afraid that it will destroy me. The whole aspect of submission many times connects to shame, right? Shame because we know we should not do it, but we're still doing it. Shame because our will is not strong enough. Shame because we are not the person that we wish to be, or the role model that we wish to be. For other people, well, addiction it's actually a repressed need for connection. Yeah, this is where it comes from, and this is what it manifests. So there's this deep need to connect, to be intimate with life, with others, and for many reasons we cannot, because we are blocked, we are traumatized, and therefore to cope with this need of connection that is not met, we indulge into an addictive behavior. That's also a classic way, which somehow is a sabotage of our own health. It's in this sense sacrificing like our sovereign power, sacrificing the longing that we have to have our needs met. And in this sacrifice, well, we destroy ourselves, or we punish ourselves in some ways. We can also bring the word slavery, right? Because addiction is a form of slavery. Slavery as I am not the master of my being, the master of my desires, the master of my emotions, and therefore I am a slave, I am a servant, and there is another force or another aspect of life that takes over and that controls my life. And usually it takes me towards destructive behaviors. And sometimes as well there is an obsessive aspect. Yeah. And the obsessive aspect is that once, let's say, if something we do in an addictive way, so we do it over and over again, and if it alters our state of consciousness, well, then we can also become obsessed with this state of consciousness. Yeah, that from all drugs, substances. So there is a wiring in the brain that happens when we do something repeatedly, that after there is a calling for the same chemistry, for the same pathways in our brain to be used. So there is also, a biochemical impulse to actually keep on doing the same behavior. So there is an obsession, an obsessive aspect to addiction as well. So of course, these are just generalities. Let's go a little bit more in detail, right? So again, when we speak about addiction, well, it's not only substances, it's not only food, it can be literally anything. It can be work, it can be, sex. It can be anything that we repeat over and over again that comes back into our life. And that somehow, when we intend not to do it, well, there's this energy that comes and forces us to do it. And then we have this conflict of will, right? And the conflict of will is that sometimes we win and we can control ourselves and stop in our tracks. And sometimes we just give up and we indulge and we surrender to this force. And then we find ourselves doing the things that we know is probably not, healthy. And even if, we would be addicted to something that is literally healthy for our system, the fact that it's addictive is actually toxic because it denies our sovereign will. So now, do we have free will or not? Well, that's, a big subject, but I just remind you, in free will, you have the word free. One of my teachers, he says, for example, that, well, free will exists if you're free. Well, are you free from any conditioning? Are you free from trauma? Are you free from the stories you're telling yourself? If yes, maybe you have some free will. But if you're not free of traumas and conditioning, then you definitely don't have free will. Just, something to ponder about. Now, let's explore addiction in more details. So what drives addiction? Well, first, let's speak about control. Yeah, because there's a big story here about control. Control that can come in two ways here. It can come like over control, or it can come like a lack of control. Yeah, so sometimes if I do something repeatedly, well, then I know what to expect, right? And if I want to reach this state, the state that I expect, well, then I indulge into this behavior. So there is a feeling of false safety there. I'm stressed. Instead of dealing with my stress, I could choose to light a cigarette or to, smoke marijuana or take a pill, just because I know that when I do this, or when I did this in the past, well, my relationship to stress changed and I can relax. So I experience stress and I know that this substance or this action that maybe is detrimental to my health will actually bring me calm and quiet and peace of mind, or it will relax my nervous system. So the control here is that I want to control how I feel. Instead of just dealing with what is and feeling what is in the moment, I want to change the way I feel. I want to control how I feel. And I privilege feeling relaxed and not feeling the stress than to actually deal with what is. That's a form of control. And of course, the other aspect is lack of control, right? So lack of control would look like in this battle of will with this, energy, this spirit that comes, that possesses me and tells me, hey, eat more sugar or go to do this again. Well, I try to resist. And so it's about self-discipline. It's about controlling my impulses, controlling my desires. And well, sometimes I lack control. Sometimes I just don't want to fight, or I don't have the vitality to fight. But it's still about control, lack of self-control in this example. And then we end up with this constant, conflict, which is to bring more self-discipline to our life and then to sabotage ourselves. Yeah, so this whole dynamic, it's extremely connected with addiction, right? So we try to apply discipline, so, not to indulge, to, do, to do something that is good for us, or to say, well, no, I'm going to stop it. And so we resist the urge, the desire, the craving until we don't. So for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, we can be really strong until something else happens, until we feel weak and vulnerable, and then we many times choose to indulge again, like a relapse. So therefore, the control because it takes so much energy. Well, it's difficult with addiction because we cannot keep control too long because it drains our energy. It requires a constant use of our vital resources and mental resources. So therefore, it's not really sustainable. And of course, in the control, then we can introduce the concept of the rebel part. Yeah? So you're Peter Pan. Yeah? So the rebel parts that actually don't want discipline. Yeah? Because they deny that you are the master of your life. So, because mastery is usually associated with a form of authority. And if you have issues with authority from your childhood, from your teenage time, then you will deny your own authority, your own right to be sovereign, and the rebel part will bring this sabotage and will always use control in a toxic way. Although it's still control, but it's part of the controlling. So, as long as you have these rebel parts that have a big impact in your life, well, and that you don't deal with them in a more healthy way, well, you probably will keep on experiencing addictions. Because every time you will try to stop the rebel part, one day will say, hey, you know what? I'm not playing the game of self-discipline and control anymore. Let's binge, let's indulge. And it's okay. Because the authorities say that we should not, and me, I'm telling, yes, we can do it. So this rebel part is as well a big part of the controlling aspect of addiction. Let's speak now about shame, because addiction many times comes with shame, and it comes from shame, right? It comes from shame. So it's, we are shameful about our addictions because maybe we feel that we are like an animal. So, we have these impulses, these cravings, like that are really primal, animalistic in some ways, and that our civilized mind as humans cannot control. So we feel that, we are not good enough. It can be as well a form of castration, a castration of our masculine energy. Yeah, so the castration, the masculine is the willpower, and I'm not speaking about men here, men and women both. We have this masculine aspect of our consciousness that can apply will, that can apply discipline, that can find a direction and move towards it. Well, when it's castrated from, past traumas, relationship with our mother, well, then it's really, difficult to apply self-discipline and to control our impulses, and this brings shame as well. Another aspect of addiction, it comes from the lack of initiations. So we are all uninitiated, no rites of passage, we don't feel adequate, we were not included in, the clans, the tribes, our societies through proper rituals, proper acknowledgement of our state of consciousness, of our state of maturity. So because we are not seen, we don't feel included, we feel more and more inadequate, and inadequacy is always, one of the main roots of addiction, right? Because if I don't know who I am, well then, I don't feel this sense of purpose, this sense of adequacy. So it's easy for me to get distracted and to indulge in addictive behaviors because I have this grief of not being seen, of not feeling adequate, this pain, right? So this is, one of the main problems of our societies where we don't initiate our youngsters, the teenagers, the children. So nobody is really adult in the sense of being initiated as an adult. So this is one of the main roots of addiction. It also connected with losing the dragon fight with the mother. Yeah, so during the conception, the first year of your life, you have what we call the dragon fight with the mother, which is how the mother behaves with you as a child, as a baby. And this is where this castration of the masculine can occur. This is where, there can be this transfer of grief, or maybe your mother simply allowed you to be who you are, to be your own unique individual, but most of the time it's not the case. So that would bring this feeling of, I have to prove something, or this feeling of pressure, this feeling of being possessed by someone else dreaming. And that would also, bring this need to escape this pressure, this tension, and to discharge it, and that would again lead to addiction. Again, the shame is connected with dissociation, with feeling trapped, with feeling enslaved in some ways, right? So it's losing our ability to apply clear choices, losing our ability to take a decision and to apply it and to follow through with it, right? So when we don't do this, well, the shame that is generated creates more dissociation. And the feeling of being trapped creates, more shame, more anger, and that puts more guilt sometimes. And this will just feed the addictive pattern as well. Now, another really important aspect on shame and addiction is it's the denial. Yeah, so many times we are indulging into addictive behaviors, and when people ask about it, or when we just, speak about ourselves, we just deny it. Well, it's okay, and we don't, see the importance of this loss of power. So we just deny it. We pretend it's not there, or because we are shameful, we don't speak about it. But it's actually a loss of power. And to reclaim power, we need to be aware that we lost power. We need to look at it in the face, in the eyes. So more denial, more shame and denial, we have less ability to retrieve power. The less power we have, the less we can apply this self-discipline to go out of our addictions. So you can see here the vicious loop. Another thing I would like to speak about is objectification. So objectification is to deny the spiritual aspect of something, is to see it as a purely material thing. So objectification of pleasure, for example, would bring, and feed addiction. Objectification of sexual pleasure, objectification of, sacred medicine substances like tobacco, like, other, shamanic world medicines. So the objectification, so removing the sacredness of it, the spiritual aspect of it, can simply, keep us into an addictive pattern because it's our own self-objectification. So we are denying our own spiritual connection, or because of a lack of our own spiritual connection with Source, well, then we objectify the rest of the world. And then we end up in this loop that also comes with shame and feeling lost and dissociated and disconnected. Sometimes because our own connection with Spirit, with Source, is not clear or is not met, or our need for connection and intimacy with spiritual life is not satisfied, is not met, then we simply subdue to another spirit, and it replaces this sense of connection. Yeah, so if I cannot connect to Source or to my own higher spirit self, well, then maybe I will dance with the spirit of tobacco, or I will, another substance, or, food, or cacao, well, whatever. And then it brings me this feeling, this sense of intimacy, connection. But it's not my own connection with Source. It's a replacement. It's like a crutch in a way. In the objectification as well, we can speak about, unresolved grief. So all this unresolved grief we carry from our ancestors, we carry from our past. So we didn't grieve, it means. So we have this pain, this sense of loss, and the grieving process didn't occur or was not completed. And then it brings this feeling of tension, this sense of loss, this sense of losing power, this sense of inadequacy. And therefore, it's also helping us, somehow bringing us in a state where we objectify reality, because to sense and connect and be intimate with Spirit, well, you need to be able to grieve, because it's your relationship with temporality. It's your relationship to accept that things come and things go, things are born and things die. And it's not about clinging and being attached to it as the magical thinking of a child. Well, grief is another big subject. I don't want to go too much here in detail, but there's a big connection between unresolved grief and addiction, obviously. Now, an interesting part in addiction as well I wanted to bring is what they teach in mystery schools. So I studied with mystery schools for years, and so the waters, right? It's connected with the water element, addictions. So the water world, well, this is the world of your desires. It's the astral plane, the astral body. It's the world of influences, right? It's the world of, the Archangel Gabriel in the mystery schools. It's about relationship. So you see that in the mystery school, the whole water initiation was connected with, clearing addictions. Yeah, so sometimes we have too much water. Yeah, so too much astral influences, and we don't have enough earth. So if you don't have enough earth, well, you cannot ground, you cannot stabilize yourself. You don't have a firm and solid earth to grow upon. So therefore you can get lost in water. Grief is deep water. You can drown in grief. So the waters needs to be crossed to go towards the air element, towards a form of representation, ideal, a cause, a concept, something that can take you out of the emotionality of the waters, so that then you can, reach one day the fire of spirit, of soul. So sometimes we have too much water, or we don't have enough earth and not enough air. So I invite you to see, if you're not drowning into your own dark, murky waters. And if it's the case, well, then you probably are, indulging yourself in a lot of addictive behaviors, and there's no way out. The way out is to find again the ground, the earth, where you can actually stabilize, where you can take support on. And it has to be gnosis. It has to be an embodied knowledge of something that you use to grow and bounce back. Yeah, so when we drown in the lake, for example, well, if we reach the bottom, we can put our feet and bounce back and go back to the surface. But if we just float around, we die. We're lost. So I just wanted to bring this interesting aspect from the mystery schools as well. Now I would like to explore, another dynamic about addiction. It's to help you understand what wound, is there. Again, there is a core wound that creates the addiction. Addiction is not the core wound itself. So, you have these 4 quadrants that I shared before in other videos. So there is a coercion aspect. Yeah. So the coercion, it's about control. It's, overt control. So the coercion aspect, well, is when there is this spirit that comes and forces us to indulge, to binge, to use the substance, to indulge in the pattern, in the behavior. So this is a coercion thing, and then when we fight against it, it's also, coercion. So I try to control myself, or I ask people to control me. I go to rehab or something, or I ask people to lock me in a room without the addictive substance around. So there's this form of, coercion, which is direct control. It's displayed control that I apply, or that the substance, controls and coerces me to do something. So when we speak about coercion, well, it's more like the victim archetype. Yeah, victim. Then there is this manipulation. So that's the covert aspect of control, right? So I hide my addictions because I'm shameful about it. I lie about it. I hide them. I do it in the corner, and I end up, isolating myself to do it. And it's all this manipulation, denial, playing games, manipulating my environment to satisfy my addictions, interacting with people with this interest to get something out of them, or to get the money, or to get the substance itself, or to, satisfy my cravings. So this all, which is completely out of integrity, manipulative aspect, well, I would call it the archetype of the liar. And it's a form of control, and it's covert. And this is where as well the denial comes from, when we deny about it, when we find excuses and we justify ourselves, finding, all these stories we are telling ourselves to justify our addiction. So then there is a third quadrant, it's competition. Yeah, so of course the competition in addiction, it's obvious, is I compete with myself or with different parts to fight against the cravings. So it's this battle of will, this inner conflict. Should I want, I don't want. It's not okay, but I will still do it, So this inner conflict. Well, this is definitely about competition. It's a competition for yourself. So it means the center of your wheels, of your medicine wheels, the ether element. The spirits try to take the ether to control you, and you're trying to defend yourself, your sense of self, so your sovereign, center of command from other spirits, and you fight. And there is this constant inner conflict. Well, in this competition, because it takes so much energy, we can be a winner for a while until we lose. So that's the archetype of the loser. And the last quadrant is worshipping. Yeah, it's deifying the substance. So it's, like completely surrendering, giving up our sovereignty, being fully addicted to something and say, it's okay, I'm a servant of this. I'm a slave of this pattern, of this egregor, this energetic field, this spirit, this substance, and I'm just, indulging and I'm worshipping it. So then I create all these stories to, put it on a pedestal, to think it's so great, to share how amazing it is, when actually I'm just a junkie. I'm just addicted. But I create this story to make it so beautiful. So it's also, a form of justification, or a form of, loving what destroys me, or justifying my lack of willpower, my lack of discipline by creating, a god. And then I become the servant of this god. And of course, there would be still a lot of denial there. That would be, for example, toxic hedonism. So, oh, me, I enjoy life. Pleasure is great. I can do what I want. I can, have a lot of sex with a lot of people. I can use all these substances because it's just hedonism, carpe diem. But it's toxic, and I'm in denial about it. So actually, the archetype there, for me, it's the slave. So you have this all dynamics that you want to observe how it works, because where they meet, so the center, the conjunction, the convergence point between these four quadrants of coercion, manipulation, competition, and worshipping takes you to the gates of the core wound that supports your addiction. So now a few words about the archetypes that, somehow connect with the addictive behaviors. Well, we spoke the slave, the loser, the liar, the victim, but as well, prey, abuser, the tempter, temptation, the damsel. So the damsel would be the dark maiden, weak feminine archetype. So these are all, these main archetypes that are connected. So, with the mechanic of addiction. So if you work with archetypes, well, you can see, how you can transform or connect with their intelligence to maybe find a way out, or to learn more about the root causes that create your addiction. And then we have masks that we wear. So the masks is, what we pretend to be, the personas we embody in relationship with our addictions. The enabler, obviously. So the enabler is a mask that allows ourselves, gives us permission slips to do things, or allows other people. So we enable it. The denier, when we lie about ourselves. The dissociated mask, multiple personalities, also connected with denial or being numb. The justifier, so the mask, finding all these nice excuses about our behaviors. The hedonist, pleasure first, it's another mask. The ceremonial priest, which is actually codependent and addicted to, a specific relationship with a substance or a medicine, and that holds space as a priest for it. The subdued, so that would be, the more victim, like surrendering in a toxic way, so lack of willpower, submission, mask. And then the weak mask, because it has a lot to do with weakness, right? So, once you see this mask, if you can see how you wear them, then, you can probably find ways to clear the masks. And because it starts with awareness, so that you can find more power in your relationship with addiction. Because it's about retrieving power and reclaiming power. Well, now let's speak about solutions, right? how to deal with your addiction. Well, let's give you a few tips, what I experienced in my own life. Of course, to identify the root cause of the addiction. So the real, need and the real things going on behind it. And to heal it. So a lot of healing work, maybe therapy, energetic work, shamanic work, well, whatever kind of work you're doing as a healing. But to identify the root cause, of course, well, that's, the obvious way. Now, there is also a somatic need connected with the tension of the root cause. And this somatic need is usually, what we seek in our addictive behavior. So if you can identify this somatic need and find healthy ways to meet this somatic need, to deal with this tension, well, then probably you can, manage your addictions better. For example, if the need is about grounding and, relaxing, the somatic need, well, instead of when I'm stressed, instead of taking a cigarette to calm down or whatever sugar to calm down and relax my nervous system, well, I could, focus on grounding and do some breath work, exercise, or, a somatic grounding exercise. So to be consciously grounding myself instead of just indulging in a, let's say, addictive, toxic behavior. Another key, it's the child's fire. So it's, as when you were a child, you had this passion for life. You had these things that you could do endlessly. You would not stop to go eating. You would not get distracted. It was something that you loved doing, creating, crafting. And it satisfied a deep, innate need in you. It's the natural fire of your creativity that you had strongly as a child. So when you can connect to this energy, this true passion, which gives you a sense of purpose and a sense of enjoying life because you're doing something and you don't look for anything in return. It's just the action of doing it is satisfying. Well, then, you don't really need to distract yourself with other addictive behaviors or substances because you are satisfied and your passion is taking over. So it's a healthy fire versus the toxic fire of addiction. Another way to deal with addiction, well, is to surrender to a greater power and apply willpower. So I'm speaking here about support groups. I'm speaking about 12 steps program where you find accountability within a group, accountability towards your sobriety or stopping the addictive behavior, let's say alcohol or drugs. So that's a Christian concept of the 12 steps, which takes you step by step as you are witnessed and supported by a group of people going through the same thing than you. And of course, it relates to God, source, the divine, something greater than you that you choose to be accountable to. And that's, one of the ways to transcend your own limitations and to be embraced by a greater power. So for this, you need to find support groups as you cannot do it alone. Another way, well, it will be to add positive behaviors, right? So mostly when the addictions come from, not a deep traumatic thing, but it's just like bad education, bad habits. If you add positive behaviors in your life, naturally, your consciousness will start to choose more these positive behaviors versus choosing the negative one. So it means add healthy food in your diet, add workouts, moving the body practices, add something that is good for you, that is healthy, try to implement it instead of focusing on stopping the stuff that you want to stop or the stuff that is destructive for your health. Add positive, uplifting behaviors, try to do it every day, and naturally the chemistry in your system will change and your orientation towards destruction will shift towards, life, uplifting, supporting, something being healthy, creating life. So add things that are good for you, and naturally the intensity or the time that you indulge in toxic behaviors will slow down until you have this click in your consciousness that maybe, you can get stronger. to actually become more and more healthy and to get rid of more and more addictive, toxic patterns. And another thing just is, as again, addiction comes from tension. It's how we discharge this tension. Well, if you want to deal with toxic behaviors, maybe find healthier ways to discharge tension. Go to a rage room where you can break stuff consciously to, take this anger out. Maybe sport, workout, adrenaline things where you exhaust your body, breath work. Art is great to also, express and release our tension. Sex, well, whatever feels healthy for you to discharge these tensions, well, you can choose it, you can channel it, you can control it in a safe environment where it's actually healthy, a healthy way to discharge the energy of the tension. And like this, the need to find destructive, toxic, addictive behaviors to discharge will reduce. So it doesn't really work on the root cause, but it's something meanwhile to cope and to handle our addictive behaviors. Of course, nothing will replace the identification of the root cause and its healing, the identification of the somatic need connected with this root cause, and finding ways to meet these needs. So when our needs are not fully met, when the root cause, so the wound, is still active, well, we won't get rid of truly of our addictions. But we can, find ways to deal with it in a way that is, more healthy. So I hope that this brought you some more understanding about addiction. Again, it's not exhaustive, it's not complete. We could speak hours about it. I just wanted to bring my piece of understanding. Maybe a piece will enlighten your day or bring you more wisdom. Well, I will do soon a group healing session about addiction, as I created a healing grid to support people with, identifying their core wound related to addiction and how to free themselves from these toxic addictive behaviors. This will be live the Saturday 13th July 2024, and the recording is always available if you want to explore it. And we can as well work in private healing sessions to understand how your addictions work and what is the root cause, and to create a healing movement there. Otherwise, you will have to seek other professional help or to find your own way towards healing. And for that, to all of us, I wish the best. Thank you.